Your testicles are full of microplastics. Everyone has seen that paper that recently came out showing 100% of men and dogs measured had microplastics in their testicles. And if you've got any level of common sense, that might be slightly concerning to you. Or perhaps you need 5 meta-analyses to tell you that microplastics accumulating in your reproductive tissue might have some negative health effects in the long term. Microplastics are plastic particles smaller than 5 millimeters, and nanoplastics are less than 1 micrometer in size. They take hundreds or thousands of years to break down, which is part of why environmentalists are so concerned about them. It also means that once they're in your body, they might never break down or leave. Some people have called microplastics our generation's lead. How could those old people have been so stupid, putting lead in everything and letting it build up in their bodies and poison them? Obviously, we'd never do anything of the sort. Anyway, microplastics have been found in human lungs, liver, kidneys, spleen, intestines, blood, and very concerningly, in the placenta and in breast milk, which rather horribly implies that babies are ingesting microplastics from their mother. And in my opinion, this is a problem. I don't think that's too unreasonable a stance to hold, although some will certainly find a way to disagree with. But the thing is, microplastics are everywhere. In your clothes, in your tap water, in your food, your cooking utensils, the dust in your house, plastic water bottles, your hygiene products, your car, in the air on the street. The reality is that by default, everyone is consuming a lot of microplastics. Some have put the number around 5 grams per week, although that has been criticized as an overestimation, but it's undeniable that we're all accumulating microplastics in our body. But I'm not the kind of person who likes to make others feel fearful and hopeless without providing them any solutions. There are lots of things you can do to drastically decrease the amount of microplastics that you expose yourself to. But first, let's just set a foundation for understanding microplastics with these 3 questions. What are the main sources of microplastics? How do they get into your body? And what do they do to your body once they're in there? Microplastics are released into the environment mostly from synthetic textiles like polyester clothes, from car tires, and from dust in the air of cities and towns. And less important but still significant are things like road markings, coatings on ships in the ocean, and personal care products like face wash, shampoo, etc. Basically, wherever plastic is used and gets broken down or worn away, it can be released into the environment, mostly in the form of little fibers, flakes, or pellets. They get into your body through 2 main ways. The first is inhalation, so breathing them into your lungs, and from your lungs, if they're small enough, they can enter into your blood and spread throughout your body. Breathing in the dust in your house or just air outside in the city or the town you live in. And the second way they get into your body is ingesting them. That means eating food and drink that contains microplastics. They get into your gut, and again, if they're small enough, some of them will be absorbed from the gut into the blood. But they may also be able to just accumulate in your gut and cause like local inflammation and local damage. The biggest sources of ingested microplastics so far seem to be bottled water and seafood. Tap water also has a fair amount, but plastic bottles seem to have about 22 times more microplastics than tap water. I'm sure the exact numbers vary, but it's quite a lot. Plastic bottles are a real problem. Seafood and shellfish especially are massively contaminated, especially if they come from China, which pumps tons and tons of plastic and other waste into the sea constantly. But it's not just those, unfortunately. There are microplastics in literally almost everything we eat. Fish, pork, beef, chicken, various fruits and vegetables, honey, beer, salt. Basically, it seems like anything that's been in contact with plastic via the air, water, machinery, or plastic containers, whatever, is likely to be contaminated. It's basically impossible to avoid entirely. What we can do currently is minimize our exposure to it and help our bodies to get it out of us. And one extra way they can get into your body is through your skin, which was confirmed in April this year, 2024. Microplastics can alter the permeability of the skin barrier, allowing themselves to pass into the deeper layers of the skin and enter the bloodstream. And this is enhanced when the skin is hydrated or more sweaty. Wearing plastic polyester clothes and sleeping in polyester bed sheets doesn't look like it's good for you, especially if you're sweating in them, which allows even more to get into your skin. Right, so we breathe them in, we ingest them through our mouths, or we absorb them through our skin. They are in our bodies, that is undeniable. But is this a bad thing? Do they do anything once they're in your body? Should we even be worried? There's not a lot of human studies yet, but first let's look at what happens when we expose expose animals to plastics. In rodents, gut health is massively affected. The microplastics can accumulate in the gut, causing injury to the digestive tissue, destroying the gut microbiome and damaging the intestinal barrier. There are lots of metabolic changes, including oxidative stress and disturbed glucose metabolism, neither of which are good. They've also been shown to cause brain degeneration similar to Parkinson's disease and some autism-like symptoms. So some scientists have suggested that microplastic exposure could be a risk factor for autism and other neurological disorders. They can cause excessive immune activation and inflammation, and perhaps what most people are interested in, it wrecks the reproductive system. In male rodents, certain microplastics have been shown to be toxic to the prostate, reduce testosterone, decrease sperm number and quality, worsen fertility, and cause testicular inflammation. And in female rodents, they are toxic to the ovaries. The egg cells are of lower quality, which can cause fertility issues, and they're associated with abnormal levels of sex steroid hormones. In fish, it's largely the same thing. Metabolic problems, disruptions to feeding behavior, stunted growth. We can look at a little bit of human evidence now. It's pretty unethical to directly expose people to a potentially harmful substance like microplastics, so getting causal evidence is very difficult. That's what we have animal models for. In humans, most of the evidence is observational, just correlations. Of course, that doesn't mean it's useless. If we observe a pattern in humans, and that's confirmed by experimental studies in animals, we might have discovered something. In women, there's strong evidence that components of plastic like BPA are toxic to the ovaries, negatively affect fertility, and alter the production of sex steroid hormones. Unfortunately, microplastics and nanoplastics very clearly accumulate in the placenta of pregnant women and may enter the blood circulation of the fetus in their womb because these nano-sized materials can cross the placental barrier. People who are exposed to a lot of plastic in their job have higher rates of colorectal cancer. In human cells, microplastics change the expression of genes, including those involved in the immune system and cell growth and survival. And in human lung cells, microplastics cause oxidative stress, which potentially disrupts the lungs' protective barrier and increases the risk for lung disease. Essentially, these microplastics are probably not doing us much good. If you want to counter the damage that microplastics are potentially doing to your reproductive system, check out my testosterone optimization guide in the description to max out your testosterone, fertility, and vitality. Alright, a few counter arguments. Are microplastics really harmful to humans? We know that they seem to be harmful in animals, but humans are pretty large. Maybe the quantities of microplastics that we consume are not enough to really have an effect in most cases, even if they do affect smaller animals like rodents or fish. Also, we've been consuming microplastics for decades now, and we haven't all died or gone infertile. Obviously, there has been a rise in chronic disease and infertility and general poor health since like the 60s or so, but the problem is there are lots of factors that could have contributed to this, and not just plastics. Dietary changes, changes in our light environment, constant exposure to electronics, many other lifestyle changes. Correlational data like this doesn't give us the full picture. They're also pretty stable and non-reactive, so as long as the plastics don't break down into their constituent chemicals, theoretically they should be fine. Maybe they just sit there in your body doing nothing. I think the most honest answer right now is that we don't really know what they do to us as humans. Experimental studies in humans are obviously lacking. We're kind of running an experiment on the entire population of the world right now because everyone is consuming microplastics. But animal studies and observational studies in humans are suggesting they might be harmful. And I think people who immediately write them off as completely harmless are being a bit dishonest because we don't really know yet. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. More and more data is going to be collected over the next few years and decades. And in my opinion, we're probably going to find that microplastics are not very good for us. We know that they're in our tissues, they can accumulate there, our bodies aren't really equipped to get rid of them or deal with them in any way. Some of them are small enough to enter cells and potentially interfere with the cellular machinery, and there's evidence in animals that they cause oxidative stress and inflammation and lots of other problems which I just talked about. So personally, I'll be playing it pretty safe and avoiding microplastics where possible. I'm not a doctor and this isn't medical advice, but on a personal level, I would recommend that you minimize plastics in your life too. Now that you've got a bit of an understanding of what these microplastics are, where they come from, and what they can do in your body, we can think about two things: minimizing our exposure to them and enhancing our body's ability to get rid of them. But I don't want you to obsess about plastics to the extent that it takes over your whole life, because I know some of you will be prone to that kind of panic and obsession. You can't get rid of all microplastics. We're always going to have some in our body, but dosage definitely does matter. If you're plastic maxing, the health effects of it is probably going to be worse than if you intentionally minimized plastics. But I don't want your life to be ruined because you're avoiding everything that could possibly harm you. Do what you can in your daily life to minimize plastic, but every now and then it's not going to immediately kill you to drink from plastic or breathe in a bit of dust or have some tap water, okay? As long as it's not all the time in huge doses. Don't be too crazy about it. But I do suggest making some reasonable changes in your life, which I'll talk about in a minute. There is more to life than just having perfect health. Ultimately, health is a tool that we use to do the things that really matter. It's a foundation and it needs to be intentionally maintained, but it's not like the end goal of your existence to be healthy. Personally, I think we should make sure that we're generally healthy so that we can enjoy our lives and do the things that matter, and we need our fertility to be good enough to have healthy children who themselves can also have children, and so on. So first, in order to minimize exposure, we need to focus mainly on the things that are going to have the largest return on investment. Enhancing your body's detox mechanisms is great, but the most important thing is just going to be minimizing your exposure to plastic in the first place. That means reducing your intake of microplastics mostly through inhalation and ingestion. So for inhalation, first you should be breathing through your nose most of the time, even while you're exercising. Your nose hairs act as a natural filter that kind of traps the little particles of dirt and dust and things like that so they don't get into your lungs. But the smaller particles below about 2.5 micrometers will pass right through that nose hair filter. So mostly we're just filtering out the larger microplastics and stuff, but not the smaller nanoplastics, unfortunately. If you breathe through your mouth, these particles are not filtered out much at all. They might get caught in the saliva, but it's not nearly as good a filter as your nose is. Secondly, dust your house regularly, at least once a week. This is something that we all know we should do, but personally I let the dust build up a bit more than I should, especially in some more hidden areas like on top of the tall bookcases or wardrobes. I'd also suggest wet dusting rather than dry dusting to minimize the amount of dust that you're brushing off into the air and then breathing in. And on a similar note, you should vacuum your floor regularly because your carpet and your floor probably has lots of dust in it. You could also get some plants in your house to potentially reduce the dust. I believe they're meant to kind of make the dust stick to them because of the moisture, and then it's not in the air and it's easier to clean off like the leaves. The evidence is a bit mixed on the ability of plants to improve air quality, but there's a minimal downside to getting some houseplants. Your house looks better and the air quality might be improved too. So if you've been neglecting cleaning your room, then maybe the idea of you breathing in a bunch of microplastic dust constantly will convince you. Next, you should consider washing your textiles more gently. So your clothes and towels and bed sheets and stuff. These all shed microfibers when they're washed, especially at high temperatures and high speeds. And these fibers can then be let loose into the air, pretty much like dust, and then you might be breathing them in. So you can use gentler washing settings on your washing machine, like slower speed and lower temperatures, and try to wash a little less frequently if possible. For stuff like jeans, you don't need to wash them after every single wear, unless you live in a really hot climate and you're getting especially sweaty and dirty. You could also use a washing bag, which is designed to catch the fibers in the washing machine. Generally try to buy natural products in your house. So for things like your bed sheets and your clothes and that, minimize the amount of synthetic fibers that you're breathing in from all of those textiles that are around you. So a bit of a bigger investment would be to buy an air purifier or an air filter for your room. And these basically suck in the air that's in your room. They'll filter out the dust and all the plastic and stuff, and then they'll push out clean filtered air. Just make sure you're changing the filter regularly, whatever the manufacturer recommends. And lastly, if possible, live away from the city, in the countryside and away from industrial plants and polluted areas. Ideally clean, pure mountain air, although even even in the mountains, you're still getting some microplastics. If you are in a city, try to avoid busy roads or heavily polluted areas as much as possible, and try not to have your windows open too much if you live in a polluted area, and focus on indoor air quality with air purifiers, dusting, having house plants, and so on. And of course, remember to breathe through your nose, especially if you're passing through a highly polluted area. And if you live in the country or a less polluted area, then you can have your windows open to get some air flowing through your house, but apparently this can actually invite more dust into your house. But personally, I don't think you should worry too much about this. Like, I'm not going to live my entire life shut indoors with no fresh air just to try and avoid dust. So my windows will be open when I feel like it, regardless of dust, unless it's like really polluted outside. I would say it's not worth stressing so much about dust that you never have your windows open. Like I said earlier, don't let this obsession with dust and plastics take over your life. So that's inhalation. Now let's talk about minimizing the ingestion of microplastics. Instead of plastic bottles and plastic food containers, use glass or metal. And definitely never let plastic bottles and food containers warm up, either in the microwave or outside on a hot day. The heat allows way more microplastics to leach into the food or the water, and then you consume even more of them. In your kitchen, instead of non-stick Teflon pans, you can use stainless steel or cast iron or even glass or ceramic, although glass doesn't hold heat very well. And if you do use non-stick, make sure you're not using metal utensils that are like scratching the surface off. Try to use wood or something. But in general, for your kitchen utensils, avoid plastic and get metal or wood instead. You need to be buying quality food, especially seafood. Don't get it sourced from places that are highly polluted like China. Unprocessed whole foods have fewer microplastics than highly processed foods. Organic, locally sourced, wild, grass-fed, pasture-raised, those are the kind of labels that you should be looking for in high quality food. They're definitely way more expensive, so just do the best you can with your current budget. I like to make high quality food a priority in my budget, and I sacrifice other things that I don't care so much about, like upgrading my phone every year, frequently eating at restaurants or getting takeaway, buying lots of clothes, that sort of stuff. Quality food is more important to me. And obviously you should try to make more money so that you can afford to prioritize your health and get really high quality food. And on the topic of food, try to buy your food without plastic wrap or in plastic bottles and stuff. You can get it from a farmer's market or straight from the butcher in paper bags instead of plastic, or like glass bottles for milk and juice and stuff. And this way you're supporting your local farmers too. Unless you want to make these big profit-driven corporations richer, I guess. Next, filter your tap water. This is generally good advice because there's not just microplastics in the tap water, but various endocrine disruptors like pesticides, estrogens, and disinfectants, as well as heavy metals. A reverse osmosis filter and then remineralizing the water is a good option. Obviously, try to get a filter that's not made of plastic. I'll admit I personally don't have a water filter yet. I'll be getting one as soon as possible. In the meantime, remember that water is not the only way to hydrate yourself. You can drink milk, ideally from glass bottles, coconut water, and other liquids like juices. Also, eating juicy fruits and vegetables. These have a lot of water in them. So like watermelon, berries, citrus fruits, cucumber, etc. All of those are very hydrating. You don't need to rely on liters and liters of straight water every day. And lastly, avoid plastic tea bags if you drink tea. Just use loose leaf versions. Letting plastic bottles sit in the sun is bad enough, so how much leaching do you think happens when tea bags are heated to boiling temperatures? And besides inhalation and ingestion, we can talk about skin absorption, the third way that these tend to get into your body. So avoid touching plastic unnecessarily. That includes like polyester clothes, bed sheets, plastic chairs, anything made of plastic really, and it's everywhere. Obviously it's impossible to completely avoid it, so just do the best you can. Switch out most of your synthetic clothes made of things like polyester and elastane and acrylic. Switch those out for natural fibers like cotton, wool, linen, etc. Especially important is going to be switching out your synthetic polyester underwear for natural fibers. There was a study in dogs that showed wearing polyester underwear caused their sperm count and motility to drop and sperm abnormalities to increase, as well as some degeneration in the testicles. And the underwear was loose fitting, so it wasn't because of the high temperatures from tight underwear. The authors believed it was because of the electrostatic potentials generated by the polyester fabric. But luckily, these sperm abnormalities were mostly reversed once they removed the polyester underwear, so it's not too late if you've been wearing polyester underwear your whole life. Go and buy like 14 pairs of 100% cotton boxers and throw out your old ones. But you might ask, what about gym clothes? I can't be wearing like cotton when I'm sweating my balls off. If possible, go shirtless, and if that's not possible, some good materials are merino wool and bamboo if you have the money for them. Cotton does also work, but you'll probably get sweaty and damp. I try to wear cotton most of the time, even while working out, but I do live in a moderate climate, so I can get away with that. If you're a high performance athlete, you might need to wear synthetic fibers to maximize performance. Maybe subtle changes in your body temperature will take you away from peak performance, so that needs to be like tightly controlled with synthetic materials, or maybe you need the flexibility of the material or whatever. If possible, try to avoid synthetic fibers for your workout clothes, but remember that your clothes are a fairly low priority for microplastic exposure. Much more important is what you're breathing in and what you're eating and drinking. So while I strongly recommend that you get natural fibers for your clothes, it may not be the end of the world if you're wearing synthetic materials, but at least get rid of your synthetic underwear. Your bed is where you spend about a third of your life, so make sure the materials are high quality natural fibers like cotton, wool, silk, linen, hemp, whatever. Buy from local small businesses if possible, and the same for your clothes, handmade, ethically sourced, etc. And your bed sheets being natural fibers is especially important if you sweat at night. Remember I mentioned earlier that sweaty skin enhances the absorption of the toxic additives in plastics. And lastly, try to use natural cosmetic products for like your skincare and your shampoo and that kind of stuff. A lot of exfoliants used to include plastic microbeads, but those have been banned in a lot of places. You can use natural exfoliants instead, like salt scrubs. My audience is mostly male, but some makeup products can have things like nylon, acrylic, and polyethylene in them. So tell your sister or girlfriend if you care about her health. When you choose your skincare and your shower gel and stuff, look for brands that explicitly say they don't contain microplastics, they're environmentally friendly, organic, etc. And check the ingredients list on all these products that you buy. Again, I'm going to emphasize that the most important thing to do is limit your exposure to these plastics. Our body is not really designed to break down and get rid of synthetic substances like microplastics. So the best thing to do is minimize the amount that gets into your body in the first place. The body's main detoxification pathways are the liver, kidneys, the lungs, the skin, digestive system, and the lymphatic system. But unfortunately, these are designed to break down like natural substances, not these synthetic insoluble plastics. Our body doesn't produce any enzymes that can break down microplastics. So once these plastics are in your body, the most important thing is going to be to make sure that they don't enter systemic circulation, meaning your bloodstream, because from there they could travel to any organ or tissue in the body. This mostly means that we need to prevent their absorption into the blood from the gut or the lungs. So I'll start with the most important detox pathways. First is the gut. So here's how to make use of the gut detox pathway to get rid of microplastics. First, you should be having relatively frequent bowel movements. This will move the plastics through your gut and hopefully prevent their absorption as much as possible. You can eat fiber like carrots to speed up your gut motility. So you should be having a bowel movement at least once a day. Somewhere between 1 and 3 times a day is good, and any more than 3 times a day and you're probably eating way too much fiber or you have some gut issues like IBS. Next, make sure that your intestinal barrier is strong to minimize the microplastics that leak into your bloodstream from your gut. Some people have a condition referred to as leaky gut, which is where your gut lining is too permeable and harmful substances in your digestive system, like pathogens and maybe microplastics, can leak out from your gut into your blood. So to ensure that your gut lining is strong, you should generally support the gut microbiome, which I'll discuss in a minute, minimize alcohol and generally unhealthy or highly processed foods, and reduce stress. Consume some bone broth, which contains collagen to reduce gut inflammation and strengthen the gut lining. And a lot of people have also had success with gelatin for healing their gut lining. And obviously eat a nutrient-rich diet, especially vitamin A and vitamin D. And this is going to come up again and again. You need to be getting all the nutrients that your body requires for all of these detox systems and really every system in your body. You need a micronutrient-rich diet. That's not negotiable. So the next point is to have a healthy gut microbiome. This this helps with binding and metabolizing environmental pollutants, which maybe could help with microplastics. There is some evidence of some bacteria being able to break down microplastics. A healthy microbiome will also strengthen the intestinal barrier to minimize microplastic absorption and reduce inflammation. And it also helps to speed things along in the gut, so microplastics spend less time in the digestive tract, which limits their absorption. You can improve the health of your gut microbiome by eating probiotic foods that contain live bacteria, like yogurt or kefir, or sauerkraut or kimchi. You should also eat prebiotic foods that feed the good bacteria in your gut, like garlic and onions. Get some fiber from fruit and vegetables. Reduce your stress. Minimize antibiotics because they attack bacteria, including the good ones in your gut, which can allow pathogens to take over your gut. And you should avoid highly processed foods with a bunch of additives because they can also disrupt the gut microbiome. Now, some specific tools that might help to bind and flush out the microplastics. First is apple pectin, and this is a type of fiber which is found in apples, and apple pectin has been used to remove nanoplastics from the water supply. So eat an apple a day, or consider supplementing apple pectin about 700 milligrams twice a day. And similarly, zeolite nanocomposites have also been used to remove microplastics from water, and also activated charcoal. Keep in mind that all three of these act within the gut, so they'll be most effective if you take them around the same time as when you're consuming a lot of plastic, like drinking from a plastic water bottle. But these adsorbents, as they're called, don't selectively affect bad substances like toxins and microplastics. They'll soak up the good stuff too. So again, these are useful as short-term tools, specifically for when you've been ingesting a lot of microplastics. And also, the use of these tools to remove microplastics specifically from the human body hasn't been directly investigated, so we're just extrapolating from that like water supply data here, assuming that they'll be able to suck up most of the microplastics in your gut as well. But all three of these are safe and they've been shown to have other benefits in the body. So there's not really any downside to these other than the money that you spend on them. The next detox system is the respiratory system. Microplastics can get trapped in the mucus of your respiratory tract and then removed by sneezing or coughing or swallowing them into your stomach. So obviously you just need to keep your lungs healthy. Try not to breathe in a load of pollution and smoke and dust and stuff. So breathe through your nose and try to avoid highly polluted areas and do some cardio. Next is the skin detox pathway. So sweating can actually excrete BPA from your body. It's not yet clear whether sweating can get rid of nanoplastics or microplastics through your skin. Those studies haven't been done yet, and plastics are larger particles than BPA, so they might be too big to escape through your skin. But again, sweating doesn't have much downside as long as you're staying hydrated and you don't overdo it. You can go in the sauna like 20 minutes 3 times a week if you've got access to one, or just work up a sweat while exercising, do some cardio. Sweating is good. And the other detox pathways are the liver, the lymphatic system, and the kidneys. But unfortunately, these three aren't very good at getting microplastics out of the body. The liver is not equipped to break down microplastics. It doesn't have enzymes to break them down, so we won't find much help there. But to support liver health anyway, you can minimize alcohol, obviously eat healthy and exercise, and some supplements that can really help are milk thistle and tudka. The lymphatic system basically picks up and moves toxins and waste products from your tissues into lymph nodes, where they can be broken down by immune cells in these lymph nodes. And these waste products and toxins and microplastics, they travel in a fluid called lymph through lymph vessels. So you have blood vessels in your body, you also have lymph vessels. So microplastics can be transported through these lymph vessels to the lymph nodes, where the immune cells called phagocytes will try to engulf them and break them down, but so far it doesn't look like they're able to break them down. So because they can't be degraded by the immune cells, they might just get stuck in the lymph nodes and build up there, which can compromise the immune function. So the immune system will mount an immune response to try and clear these microplastics out, with inflammation and a bunch of immune cells coming to the site of inflammation to try and deal with the foreign substance, the microplastic, but so far it seems like they're not able to. So you get all the downsides of excessive inflammation causing tissue damage, etc., but not the upside of actually clearing out the harmful substance instance. But obviously we still want these systems working well, so you can try to support your lymphatic system by staying hydrated, exercising, eating a nutrient-rich diet, and doing lymph massages. Again, none of those things are going to hurt your chances. And now the kidneys. The kidneys filter the blood, removing small waste molecules where they can be excreted in the urine. Most of the microplastics, though, they're actually too big to be filtered out of the blood, so they'll just get stuck in the filters in the kidneys and accumulate, causing inflammation and disruption to the kidney function. But we still want our kidneys working well, so you should stay hydrated, eat a nutrient-rich diet, and avoid medications or other substances that might damage your kidneys. And a couple of other interesting options for getting rid of microplastics or the additives that are in plastics. First is donating plasma or donating blood. This has been shown to reduce the levels of polyfluoroalkyl substances or PFAS in the blood serum. Donating plasma appears to be better for getting rid of this, so maybe the medieval doctors were actually onto something with using leeches to take blood out of people. Problem is, of course, that your blood and all of the microplastics and all of the little harmful substances that might be in your blood will then be transferred to the next person who receives your blood. But for you, donating plasma, getting these things out of your blood can be a good option. And another very interesting one is that some scientists have developed genetically engineered E. coli bacteria that can turn terephthalic acid, which is found in polyethylene plastic bottles, into the relatively harmless adipic acid. So basically these bacteria pretty much break down the components of plastic bottles into harmless substances, which then we can just excrete those out. So maybe in many years we'll have supplements containing genetically engineered bacteria to metabolize microplastics in our bodies, and the products of the plastic can then just be excreted out in the urine or whatever. Of course, getting ethical approval for these genetically engineered bacteria supplements will probably be very hard, but maybe there's some hope that we can actually break down the plastics that are already in our body using these bacteria. This has been a very long video, but this is the last section, so thank you for listening this whole time if you are still here. You're unlikely to get all of the microplastics out of your system, so they might still be doing some damage in there. So what can you do to mitigate that damage? Well, you can support your immune system and reduce inflammation by eating a nutrient-rich diet, especially getting some zinc, vitamin D, vitamin C, and iodine. And some more things that will help your immune system are sleep, grounding, which is just getting your skin in contact with the earth to allow the transfer of electrons between your body and the electromagnetic field of the earth. This has been shown to reduce inflammation and oxidative stress, and also just reduce stress in your life in general. That will help support your immune system. Minimizing oxidative stress within your cells is also going to mitigate some of the damage that microplastics may be doing in your body, because from the animal studies we can see that they can potentially cause inflammation and oxidative stress. So we want to fight against that by supporting our body's natural antioxidant capacities. So you can eat antioxidant nutrients like vitamin E, which is found in extra virgin olive oil, red palm oil, and some seeds. Vitamin C, which is found in citrus fruits, strawberries, and bell peppers. CoQ10 or coenzyme Q10, which is found in beef heart and other meat and fish. Curcumin, which is found in turmeric, or you can supplement curcumin directly. And then resveratrol, which is found in red wine and grapes. So those are the antioxidant nutrients. Green tea also has a lot of antioxidants in it, and you should also avoid smoking, alcohol, and pollution. Prioritize your gut microbiome health, like I described earlier, because the gut is very important for minimizing microplastic ingestion, and also that's the place where microplastics might get kind of stuck and accumulate. If they can't be absorbed, they might just get stuck in your gut, cause local inflammation. Also, reproductive health seems to be affected by microplastics, so we need to intentionally support reproductive health. Again, with antioxidants, like I mentioned earlier. Also eating healthy fats like meat, fish, and olive oil, and avoiding polyunsaturated fatty acids like canola oil. Eating zinc from oysters and red meat, and getting some selenium from Brazil nuts. Although if you eat enough animal products, you probably don't really need extra selenium. Avoiding processed foods is always good, and then exercise like cardio and resistance training, reducing stress and getting good sleep, so like lifestyle factors, those are all very good for supporting your reproductive health. Okay, that was a very long video, and honestly I didn't even cover everything that I could have covered. There's like way more information available on this topic, but I hope this was at least a useful introduction. If you'd like more detail on how to counter the damage potentially done by microplastics to your testosterone and your fertility, I've got a testosterone optimization guide that many guys have found very useful. And for the exercise side of things, I've also got some physique programs on my website if you would like some guidance for building muscle and getting stronger. So check the links in the description for both of those. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you sitting through this very long video and look forward to the next one.